Hi Craig, I'm Ezelle from the upcoming. Lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you too.
So congratulations on a fantastic series.
Thank you very much.
Kickoff. So what made you want to tell the story?
That's a good question. And, you know, I've always been very aware of the influence that punk had on art, on culture, on music, on fashion and creativity in general, and also politics. You know, I grew up in a very suburban beachside suburb in Australia. So you would think that was a million miles away from punk. But in a way it wasn't, because, you know, we were all looking for ways to say something, and punk stood for true authenticity. And so when the opportunity came along, when Gail Lyon, one of our American producers, approached me with the book, I consumed the book because I was in LA and I was driving around a lot, working on something else, and Steve reads the audio book. So I not was only listening to the book, but I was listening to his voice. So there was all this incredible kind of subtext and emotion, humor beneath it. And so the coalition of those two things, because it's not only about Steve at all, but Steve is the emotional way in. And as you know, when you're doing something about famous things or famous people, it's very hard often to get past the perceived knowledge or the cliche. So he's not the famous one, you know, and he had an incredible story. Just his life is incredible, and his childhood, very tough childhood. So it was the combination of those two things that really made me want to do it.
And does it feel obviously very timely to have such this series out while the Jubilee is going on?
It's very, very, very timely, and happy Jubilee, you match. No, and it's great. And, you know, the thing with the Pistols wasn't that they hated the Queen or anything. It was just like, well, it's a democracy. If we want to write a song about the Queen, why can't we? You know, isn't it a democracy? When God Save the Queen got to #1, first of all, they tried to fudge it, so it sort of didn't. And then when it did get to #1, they wouldn't play it on the BBC because they were so shocked and offended by it. So really that's a mark of really how conservative the culture was back then, and the poverty the young people were experiencing. But a lot of those things are repeating themselves now. So it's as relevant then, as relevant now as it was back then.
And obviously working with Danny Boyle and such an ensemble cast, I mean, how did that feel with the casting process and bringing that all together?
You know, Danny Boyle's incredible, and the Sex Pistols were very important to him growing up because he's also from a working class family up in Manchester. He wanted to create, and they inspired him to create. We knew that we wanted to cast young people because the Pistols were very young. That's a part of their story. In a way, they were young enough to be brave and kind of, you know, crazily optimistic about what they could do. I think that's that sort of drive and optimism of youth, because even though they were represented in some parts of the media as nihilists, they weren't. They wanted to play music. They were other people were the ones banning them. You know, they just wanted to play music, but they were demonized. But they kept on going, and they didn't take no for an answer, and they didn't let the establishment put them down. People were maligning them and marginalizing them, but they didn't take it. They kept on standing up on stage, playing their instruments, singing their songs, and eventually they created a culture and a movement which changed the world. You know, we had to cast young actors who would embody that, and that was a risky thing to do, but they're amazing. Like, hand on heart, they are the most incredible cast I've ever worked with. They dedicated themselves like no other cast I've ever known, and of course that's Danny, that's the material. They learned how to play the music. Every piece of music played on screen is actually played by the actors, including Sydney Chandler, who plays Chrissy Hine. So they studied for 2 months how to play before we even started rehearsing. They're amazing.
Oh, thank you very much for speaking to us. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.